नमो तस्सा भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्सा। नमो तस्सा भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्सा। नमो तस्सा भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्सा। इतिपिसो भगवारहं सम्मा सम्बुद्धो विद्याचरण संपन्नो सुगतो लोकविदु अनुत्तरो पुरिसधम्मसारथि सत्तादेव मनुष्याणां बुद्धो भगवाति। नमो तस्स सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्सा। ये च बुद्धा अतीता च ये च बुद्धा अनागता पच्चुपन्ना च ये बुद्धा अहं वन्दामि सर्वदा। नत्ति मे शरणं अन्यं बुद्धो मे शरणं वरं ये तेन सच्चवज्जेन होतु मे जयमङ्गलम्। उत्तमङ्गेन वन्देऽहं पादपंसो वरुत्तमं। बुद्धेयो कलितो दोषो बुद्धो कमतु तं मम। बुद्धं यावनिब्बानपर्यन्तं शरणं गच्छामि। स्वाक्कातो भगवता धम्मो सन्दिटिको अकालिको एहि पश्चिको अपनायिको पच्छत्तं वेदितव्यो विन्नुहीति। नमो तस्सनियानिकस्य धम्मस्सा। ये च धम्मा अतीता च ये च धम्मा अनागता पच्चुपन्ना च ये धम्मा अहं वन्दामि सर्वदा। नत्ति मे शरणं अन्यं धम्मो मे शरणं वरं ये तेन सच्चवज्जेन होतु मे जयमङ्गलम्। उत्तमङ्गेन वन्देऽहं धम्मं च त्रिविधुत्तमं। धम्मेयो कलितो दोषो धम्मो कमतु तं मम। धम्मं यावनिब्बानपर्यन्तं शरणं गच्छामि। सुपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संगो उजुपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संगो न्यायपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संगो सामीचिपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संगो। यदिदं चत्तारि पुरिसयुगानि अट्टपुरिसपुद्गला एषा भगवतो सावक संगो। आहुनेयो पाहुनेयो दक्षिणेयो अंजलिकरणीयो अनुत्तरं पुण्यकेतं लोकस्साति। नमो तस्स अट्ट अर्य पुद्गला महासंगसा। ये च संगा अतीता च ये च संगा अनागता पच्चुपन्ना च ये संगा अहं वन्दामि सर्वदा। नत्ति मे शरणं अन्यं संघो मे शरणं वरं ये तेन सच्चवज्जेन होतु मे जयमङ्गलम्। उत्तमङ्गेन वन्देऽहं संघं च त्रिविधुत्तमम्। संज्ञेयो कलितो दोषो संगो कमतु तं मम। संगं यावनिब्बानपर्यन्तं शरणं गच्छामि। विपत्ति पटिवाहाय सब्बसम्पत्सिद्धिया सब्बदुःखं विनाशाय सब्बभयं विनाशाय सब्बरोगं विनाशाय भवेद्दीर्घायुप्रदायक सब्बलोकं हितत्ताय परितं वनामहे। समन्ता चक्रवालेषु अत्र गच्छन्तु देवता सद्धम्मं मुनिराजस्सा सुनन्तु सग्गमोक्तदं। धम्मस्सवनकालो अयं वदन्तः धम्मस्सवनकालो अयं वदन्तः धम्मस्सवनकालो अयं वदन्तः। नमो तस्स भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्सा। वन्दे धनङ्करं बुद्धं वन्दे मेदङ्करं मुनिं शरणङ्करं मुनिं वन्दे दीपङ्करं जिनानमे। वन्दे कोण्डान्यसत्तारं वन्दे मङ्गलनायका वन्दे सुमानसं बुद्धं वन्दे रेवतनायका वन्दे शोभितसंबुद्धं गणमदसिंहिनमे। वन्दे पदुमसंबुद्धं वन्दे नारदनायकं पदमुत्तरं मुनिं वन्दे वन्दे सुमेधनायकं वन्दे सुजातसंबुद्धं पियदसिंहिनमे। अत्तदसिंहमुनिं वन्दे धम्मदसिंहिनमे। वन्दे सिद्धार्थसत्तारं वन्दे तिस्सा महामुनि वन्दे पुस्सा महावीरं वन्दे विपस्सिनायका सिकिं महामुनिं वन्दे वन्दे वत्सनायका ककुसन्दं मुनिं वन्दे वन्दे कोनगमनायका कස්සपं सुगतं वन्दे वन्दे गौतमनायका अट्टविंशति मे बुद्धा निब्बानमतदायका नमामि शिरसा नित्यं ते मं रक्षन्तु सर्वदा। एतेन सच्चवज्जेन स्वप्नो होतु सर्वदा। एतेन सच्चवज्जेन होतु जयमङ्गलम्। एतेन सच्चवज्जेन पाप्नो रथनत्रयं सब्बितियो विवज्जन्तु सब्बरोगो विनश्यतु। माते भवत्वन्तरायो सुखी दीर्घायुको भव। भवतु सब्बमङ्गलं रक्षन्तु सब्बदेवता Sabba Buddhanubhavena, Sabba Dhammanubhavena, Sabba Sanghanubhavena, Sati Bhavantute, Imina Punya Kamena, Mame Bala Samagamo, Satang Samagamo, Hotu, Yavanipana Patya, Idanme Punya Kamang, Asavakayangvaham, Hotu, Sabba Dukka Pamuchatu, Nibbana Sampachayo, Hotu, Sadhu. Okay, so today's topic, Dhamma talk, is about ignorance. Again, we will understand this ignorance from different perspectives. What is a worldly perspective? How people define and say perceive this word ignorance, this aspect, this quality of the human life was very important, very major quality, major say can't call it as one of the abstracts, though it looks like an abstract thing, ignorance, but it can be defined, it can be say understood, it can be step by step, uh, it can be say conquered. Ignorance can be conquered step by understanding. That's what is all this path of Buddha. Buddhism is all about say countering this ignorance with buddhi. So countering or say overpowering, subduing, dissolving, and then finally decimating and become Buddha, Bodhi, getting that ultimate wisdom, ultimate knowledge. So that is the process of say all Buddhas. Today's chanting also. It's not about just our Buddha, Gautama Buddha, the present Buddha. There are so many previous Buddhas. There will be so many future Buddhas also. All these people, what they do, they start understanding this ignorance and they start countering it. They start overpowering it. They start dissolving and decimating it with, say, wisdom. And that's how they become Buddhas. So they use their intelligence, which is very unique, especially in this human world. We are bestowed with both these qualities. We are bestowed with a lot of ignorance also. And luckily, we are bestowed with a lot of intelligence and wisdom also. But all Buddhas and all the say followers of Buddhas, they just start making use of these different tools that we have already bestowed with, like this intelligence and wisdom, to understand this ignorance and start dissolving it, and then they become the ultimately say enlightened or liberated or wise Buddhas. So actually, this entire path of Buddhism is to understand this ignorance. Understanding ignorance itself is a great wisdom. Keep on understanding it in its entirety from all its dimensions, then automatically one will start becoming an intelligent person, wise person, or a Buddha. So we remembered not just one Gautama Buddha, we remembered all the Buddhas in this chanting, so that we'll get that confidence that so it's not the domain of only one person like our Gautama Buddha. So anybody can enter into this this domain of understanding ignorance, conquering ignorance. So it is anybody's, it is everyone's domain, everyone's field. So one can definitely work on it and can become a wise person or a happy person. Actually, again in Buddhism, wisdom and happiness, they go together. Ignorance, immorality, unskillfulness, suffering, All these things, they go together. So those things we will see later. So now what I wanted to tell you is this chanting that we have just uttered, these 28 Buddhas, it should inspire us that it is open for everyone. This knowledge is open for everyone. This understanding is open for everyone. This path is open for everyone. It's not like only selected few or selected one. He only should work on this. He only should realize this. No, that is not the reality here. That is not the truth here. The truth is like it is open. Anybody who wants to get the true happiness by achieving true wisdom, they are welcome to this path, to understand ignorance, to conquer ignorance. That is the point here. So by chanting these 28 Buddhas, so that's what is the message. So with that, now we'll start understanding this ignorance, how different people have defined ignorance, and what is the Buddha's perspective of ignorance. And of course, again, Buddha's perspective also has so many dimensions, so many angles, so many ways and means one can understand ignorance. But we will classify the different ways and means to understand ignorance, and then as much as possible within this 1 hour, we will understand about ignorance. Of course, each and every talk, each and every meditation technique, each and every whatever the meditation process or technique, or each and every word for that matter of Buddha is to work on our own ignorance. Will help us to understand our ignorance and to work on our own ignorance and to dissolve and decimate it. That is the very purpose of all Buddhas. Buddhas arise in this world with that very purpose of hitting so-called biggest enemy of the human world. For that matter, for all the beings, the biggest enemy is ignorance. So to understand this enemy and to conquer and to defeat him is the very sole purpose of the life and the teachings of all Buddhas. And of course, that should be the purpose of all the humans also. Because again, human life is so precious and it's so rare also. So one should make use of this life for this purpose. This is actually the sole purpose. But unfortunately, out of a lot of compulsions, we are busy in so many other things. But deep inside, at least, you should keep this idea. Yes, this is the purpose. One should work on this. One should annihilate this. One should remove this as much as possible. If not in this life, so it should be continued in the next life also, as much as possible in this life, and in the future lives also it should be continued. That aspiration one should keep, because that is the very sole purpose of spirituality. Not just spirituality, that is the very intent of calling this world as the world of humans or the manushas. One who can develop his mind, he is a manusha, he is a human. So how to develop the mind? To understand the ignorance and to remove the ignorance. That is what is the way to develop the mind. So in that way, so one should understand the priority. One should understand the importance of understanding ignorance, of knowing, working on ignorance, and coming out of ignorance. So that should be kept, if not given all the time and all the energy towards it, at least it should be kept in your hearts and minds as one of the priorities. Whenever the opportunity comes, whenever the time, whenever you get the time, then definitely one should work on it. By listening, by reading, by meditating, by discussing, one should always work on this priority of the life. That is to fix this so-called ignorance. Because as I was telling you, we are bestowed with both these things. We are bestowed with good enemies and good friends also. The biggest enemy is ignorance. The biggest friend is wisdom, our own intelligence, our own wisdom. So we should make use of this good friend to understand and to fix and to defeat this bad enemy, very bad enemy, ignorance. Okay. So that's about the importance of today's topic. Now coming to the different perceptions, different say uh, definitions of the how different people understand ignorance, the different approaches to understand ignorance. One is like worldly approach. In the world, people define ignorance in different ways. So how they define this ignorance? If you are lacking something, lacking some knowledge or some information, they call you as ignorant. Is it not? That's how the world defines ignorance. Say, especially which is not suitable in that moment, in that situation, in that circumstance. If you are behaving weirdly, if you are behaving which is not suitable behavior in that particular moment, particular situation, then the people call such a person as ignorant person, such lack of knowledge as ignorance. So to give an example, say if you don't know the etiquette in a place, in a hotel, let us say, then they call you as an ignorant person, not having the information and not behaving appropriately. That propriety, if you lose, generally people call such a quality, such an exhibition of say your behavior as an ignorant behavior. So be a Roman while you are in Rome. That's what is one famous statement about the propriety or the appropriateness. So if you are not behaving according to the situation, maybe because of your lack of knowledge, lack of information, or maybe because of so many other, say, mental weaknesses, like maybe sometimes, maybe out of ego also, out of prideness also behave, say, weirdly, out of, say, dullness of the mind, out of unawareness, out of laziness. So you behave, say, inappropriately in a suitable situation, then it is considered as ignorance. That is the worldly standard of ignorance. It's also okay. It's also correct. One should be worldly smart also. Worldly skillfulness, worldly smartness is also required. So for that, so before entering into a place or before going to a place or a situation, you should know about some basic things about that particular event or situation or that particular moment, how the people during the time, and maybe the other conditions also like weather or the minds, and also the different activities that are supposed to be done in that particular place. A little bit of knowledge one should have, a little bit of information and knowledge. But accordingly, one should try to fit into that situation. Then that will not come under ignorance. Then you will be a smart person. That smartness is considered as wisdom or knowledge or opposite of ignorance in many of the worldly situations. That is a worldly definition of ignorance. So that appropriateness is the key. If you lack that appropriateness, then you are an ignorant person. In any situation, in any moment, in any circumstance. So if you lack that appropriate, that suitability, then you will be considered as an ignorant person. That's what is the worldly definition of ignorance. Now coming to the other religions, what other religions they talk about ignorance. The Buddha also starts, say, one of the famous discourses. It's called dependent origination. All the origination, all the things that are originated in this life, that are seen in this existence, they are rooted, arise, they are originated from what is called the ignorance. That's what Buddha declares. Avidya Pachaya Sankara. From avidya, from ignorance only, Sankara means all mental formations, like your ego, like your, say, your fear or your anxiety or your, say, uh, your power, your intuitions, your insights, everything, they arise from your greed, hatred, delusion. Everything arises from this ignorance. That's what Buddha says. This dependent origination. This I'll say give a little more information about this. At the end of this talk. So what I want to say at this juncture is like Buddha also talks about ignorance is the cause of everything, every damn thing. Everything that arises in the mind, that individuality, everything comes from the ignorance only. And from there, your consciousness arises. From the consciousness, everything, your senses, your body, your desires, your sensations, your desires, your say, birth, old age, sickness, and death, and this repeated cycle of births and deaths, everything happens from the ignorance zone. That's what Buddha declares in this dependent origination. All suffering is rooted in ignorance. That's what is the summary of this, this discourse, this declaration of Buddha. So that Buddha's approach to fix this ignorance, we will see a little later. In the same way, in other religions also, more or less, they talk about ignorance only is the cause of, say, repeated births and deaths, and suffering in the life. So more or less they define, more or less they accept that ignorance is the cause, but their ways and means to fix ignorance is completely different from what Buddha says. For example, say in Christianity or in Islam or even in Hinduism, in some sects, in many sects of Hinduism or in Sikhism, most of the religions are theistic religions. If you don't have complete faith in the God, that particular religious, in that particular religion, they claim some person or some being as the God. For example, in Sikhism, let us say, they have their own creator God. In Islam, Allah is the creator God, and in Christianity, Father is the creator God. And in different sects of Hinduism, different sects they claim one being as the creator. Like many Shaivites, they consider Shiva as the creator, and Vaishnavites they consider maybe Vishnu. Of course, so many sects are there in Hinduism, and they call different beings as the creators. And if you don't have faith in that creator God, let us say, then that is what is ignorance. According to their definition, ignorance is not having faith in the particular creator of that particular religion. For example, in Islam, let us say, if you don't have faith in, Allah, then you are considered as an ignorant person, and you are considered as a kafir also, non-believer. He is an ignorant person, and they think that it is their duty to change that their belief, their wrong belief. They may be having wrong belief in something else, so converting their mind from that wrong belief to this believing in that creator God. That is what is wisdom. That is what is the intelligence. That is what is the very purpose of all the followers of Allah. That's what they think, they consider. The same thing holds good with other religions also. All other religions, they think that believing in that particular God or there on his scripture, on his messenger, the belief, of course, the faith is the wisdom or the intelligence or the antithesis or antidote of ignorance in almost all religions. Of course, not only in religions, even in the worldly life also. Say um, for a politician, if you don't know the basics of the politics of that particular region, then he will consider you as an ignorant fellow. A scientist, if you don't have some basic principles, basic idea about the science, then he will consider you as an ignorant person. That way, to each and individual, a few things that will so it will not fit into their understanding, their belief. If your belief won't fit into their belief, then you will be considered as an ignorant person. The same truth holds good in the religions also. So that kind of religious belief is one of the say parameters considered by many people, even the so-called religious leaders also, as an indication of your ignorance. To some extent, it is there in Buddhism also. Buddha also has given a few parameters which will strengthen your faith as the index for your wisdom and the power to fix your ignorance. So what I mean to say is, faith is it is integral. Faith is integral to achieve any kind of wisdom, any kind of ability to fight ignorance. So in that way, of course, I don't say that they are wrong. If you don't have some basic knowledge about the politics, you can't survive in that particular region. For example, I am here in, say, the northern Nepal, in the Himalaya region. I should know a basic, basic things about the people here, the culture. If I want to be in the midst of them, a few things I should know. Otherwise, I can't lead a very harmonious life. So to that extent, I am an ignorant person. In the same way, if you are surrounded by a group of people who follow some religion, you should have some basic idea about that particular religion. Then only you fit into that group if you are interacting with that group quite regularly. Of course, say for some meditators, and in my case, for example, if I am completely into my meditation and my mending my own mind, then I need not bother much about the people around me. But when you are interacting with the people, especially that's what is as a lay person one has to do, she should have that basic understanding of the people around them and the leaders in that group and their beliefs, their systems. Some understanding should be there. So in that sense, so many theistic religions, somehow they struggle to put in this worldly survival, worldly harmony, and based on that worldly harmony, to work on the mind and to develop some kind of some religious powers also, or religious abilities also. To some extent, maybe liberation of the mind also. To some extent, enlightenment also. So these things also have some impact in fixing our ignorance. As let us say in Hinduism, there are so many jhanas, the deep absorptions they teach. Based on that view of that there is one creator God, but still it will help many meditators to achieve some some divine realms or even the Brahma realms, and they achieve some higher happiness. Definitely, the same thing holds good with other religions also. By following their principles, their if there are authoritative principles and techniques, one can definitely conquer the ignorance. Is suffering. Conquering ignorance means like conquering suffering, and repeated births also one can conquer to a great extent. If you are humans, if you are animals, repeatedly once in 10 years, 20 years, 30, 50 years, 100 years, one will die, and again one has to take birth. But once a person becomes a divine being, then he will enjoy a lot of divine happiness and long life also. And if a person becomes a Brahma, then his life will be much more longer, and his happiness is also much more longer. In that way, we can't outrightly reject, say, all other, say, versions of ignorance and their ways and means to conquer ignorance. Outrightly, one can't reject it. But Buddha's, say, his birth and his mission is to, say, completely decimate the suffering and the ignorance, to make it absolutely zero. So that is such a powerful mission. Only Buddhas can take up. So they have designed so many powerful tools and so powerful means and ways to fix this ignorance. So those means also very, very powerful. Like all these right view approaches you are learning, they're so powerful means, powerful tools. So they fix the ignorance, they fix the suffering to its core. To its core, it can fix. So the scriptures, the faith in the scriptures, the faith in the religious leaders, it will definitely have some kind of impact. It will calm down your mind. It will divert your mind from the immoral things, which will make you more miserable. If you indulge in so many immoral things, it will make you more miserable. But there are some diverting techniques, diverting measures of the means, say, told or taught by different religious leaders. Definitely they will have some impact. Though you can't completely annihilate the suffering and the ignorance, completely destroy, make it zero, it may not be possible. Because, of course, you will come to know when we start discussing about this, say, this authoritative ways and means to fix ignorance by the Buddhist principles. So, in that way, they have their own ways and means to fix ignorance, but they have their own limitation also. So that's what is the point. So other religions also, they agree, they accept that ignorance is the cause of suffering. Ignorance is the cause of repeated births and deaths. Ignorance of what? Ignorance of not knowing their God or their creator God or their religion or their scriptures or their gurus. Not having faith in that, that is also ignorance. That's the basic ignorance from which all other ignorance also will start. Not knowing what is right, what is wrong, what is relatively permanent, say, wholesome thing. And of course, they have the versions like killing is not good, morality in many religions. Immorality is ignorance, morality is wisdom. Many religions will say stinginess is ignorance, generosity is wisdom. Many religions will say faith, not having faith is ignorance, having faith is wisdom. So many religions will say. So in that way, a few things are common with the right view approach, like this morality, generosity, faith. They lead to wisdom. That is quite common with the different religions, all the religions. But now we will take up the Buddha's version of ignorance and the different ways and means given by Buddha to fix this ignorance. Just for some time, because it has so many, as I was telling you in the beginning, it has so many ways of looking at it, understanding it, the ignorance. Sometime back, of course, in each and every talk, in each and every meditation session, meditation course, we are working on our ignorance only. Each and every minute, each and every word, it's all about fixing and understanding the ignorance and fixing it. The Four Noble Truths is also nothing but understanding the ignorance and fixing it. Suffering, the cause of suffering, and fixing the suffering. That's what is the Four Noble Truths. Because suffering and ignorance, as I told you, they go together. If you are ignorant, then you are suffering. If you are skillfully, authoritatively fixing ignorance, then you are fixing suffering also. So in that way, Buddha talks about this ignorance as suffering, And because of that reason only, Buddha has given the Four Noble Truths. So understanding the Four Noble Truths deeper and deeper is understanding the ignorance and fixing it. That's what I want to say. So if you don't have the understanding of the Four Noble Truths, then you are ignorant. That's what is an authoritative statement by Buddha. What is authoritative statement by Buddha? What is the information and knowledge? It's not just information. Knowledge of Four Noble Truths. Knowledge means what? What is the difference between information and knowledge? Information is just a theoretical idea, theoretical say facts that you are getting with your by listening to it or by analyzing it. Knowledge means you're experiencing it, you're realizing it with the experience. A craving thought, a stingy thought, a hateful thought that creates some suffering, some pain in my body that you're experiencing it. That is the knowledge. So in that way, Buddha says, for the knowledge of Four Noble Truths, if you lack it, you don't have the knowledge of Four Noble Truths, you are ignorant. Because you have not understood craving is the cause of suffering, giving is the cause of happiness. This basic understanding about the happiness and suffering, if you are lacking it, then you are definitely an ignorant person. Whatever knowledge you may be having in your, say, in your worldly, say, worldly things, like you may be having a lot of knowledge about politics or geography or plants or the stars or the atoms, oceans or any damn thing, animals. So you may be having so much of knowledge, you are still an absolutely a foolish fellow. If you don't have the knowledge of the happiness and suffering, if you don't have the knowledge of the Four Noble Truths, that is what is the authoritative statement given by Buddha about ignorance. Then what else is ignorance? If you don't have the knowledge of the cause and effect, for every cause, if it's the right cause, will lead to right effect. If it is a wrong cause, that will lead to wrong effect. Wrong actions will lead to wrong reactions. Right actions will lead to right reactions. Good begets good, bad begets bad. What is good and bad? Anything that gives me happiness, that is good. While doing it and after doing it, or even just before doing it also, while planning about something, if that gives me happiness, or while doing it, it gives me happiness, and after doing it also, it gives me happiness, that is good. If you don't have that clarity of good and bad, if you don't have that clarity of suffering and happiness correctly, and the cause of suffering and the cause of happiness, if you don't have, that is, ignorance. So that cause and effect, understanding of cause and effect, what leads to what? What cause leads to what effect? Killing leads to killing only. If you are habituated to killing, you will be killed sooner or later. If you are habituated to lie, you will be lied, you will be cheated sooner or later. So that is what is cause and effect. That is what is karma. That is what is action and reaction. So if that understanding you lack, then also it is ignorance. And again, Buddha talks about two more aspects of say ignorance that I will tell you a little later. So before that, say right view and wrong view. Actually, in a way, right view is also wisdom. Wrong view is ignorance. Having wrong view is ignorance. So many kinds of wrong view. People have a lot of wrong views. The creator, God, the extreme views. All extreme views are wrong views. So that is also ignorance. All the extreme views, like body-centered views or the soul-centered views. If you keep that kind of views, so according to Buddha, that is also ignorance. That is wrong view. Wrong view is also ignorance. So in addition to wrong view, Buddha also talks about 13 more unwholesome or immoral mental traits, just like wrong view. Wrong view is one mental unwholesome trait. The same way, there are 13 more unwholesome traits that will come under ignorance. That I will explain a little later. So in that way, Buddha is very, very clear, very specific in defining, redefining, in say discriminating, in say dissecting, in differentiating, say ignorance from wisdom. In say in Dhamma, in the different teachings, so we will try to understand the ignorance from the Dhamma perspective and also from the Abhidhamma perspective. What is Dhamma perspective? For general people, what Buddha talks about regarding this ignorance, that is Dhamma perspective. With regard to the mind, with regard to the mental factors, what Buddha describes or defines about ignorance, that is Abhidhamma perspective. In both these perspectives, we'll understand this say ignorance. So now coming to this Dhamma perspective. So even Buddha says for general public, for Dhamma in Dhamma perspective, he says like if you don't have faith in Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha, after all they meant for the absolute liberation of the mind, the absolute happiness. So Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, they stand for the ultimate goal of mind purification and mind liberation and absolute enlightenment, and the different ways and means to achieve it. That's what it stands for. All these three gems, Tiratana, Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, they stand for the ways and means and the goal of liberation of the mind, goal of ultimate purification of the mind. If you don't have faith in it, then you are living the life of an animal. Then you are definitely an ignorant person. The animals, they don't have this aspiration of complete purification of the mind, not having that zeal or that enthusiasm or that eagerness to learn and to purify the mind and to say progress in this path of mind purification. If that zeal and enthusiasm, if you are lacking it, if you don't have faith in it, if you don't have confidence in it, if you don't have the minimum inclination towards it, then absolutely you are an ignorant person. So in that way, Buddha actually starts defining ignorance. You have the lack of say faith in this absolute realities, absolute necessities of human life. If you're lacking it, that faith, if you're lacking it, that aspiration, if that inclination, if you're lacking it, then you are an ignorant person. So in that way, so faith is very much say highlighted or say encouraged by Buddha in this ultimate goal of mind liberation, and the different ways and means designed and explained by Buddha, by following which one can reach that ultimate happiness. And of course, in each and every step that path, it liberates, it gives the true happiness. That's why one should have faith in this. That is the point. And of course, before taking up the Abhidhamma aspects of say ignorance, so we will just see one more main aspect, that whether the other religions, theistic religions or Buddhism, they highlight regarding this ignorance is the ego, pride. In all religions also, people call the pride or the ego or the say, yeah, that I-ness and minus, that is the cause of all suffering. It is true to some extent in Buddhism also. If you don't discover who am I, and this I is, say, if you simply give some kind of color, some kind of shape and color to this I and get stuck in it, then you end up in a lot of suffering. That's what all other religions define. And one should shut off all this coloring, all this shaping of I, and becoming one with this universal I. Give up this mean I and become one with the universal I. That's what is the way and mean. That is what is the base, and that is what is the primary, say, means to become a happy person, to become a wise person. That's what many religions say. Ego is the main obstacle for your happiness, for your wisdom. That's what many people say. But for Buddha, it is partially true. It is not completely true. It is not who am I that is more important for Buddha. It is what is this I? There is nothing like one idea of permanence Buddha has not given to this I. But in other religions, the theistic religions, they give some idea of permanence to this I, and they give some universality to this I. And that's how this universal I, that is the God or the universal consciousness, universal love, whatever it is, they keep it as permanent and they try to connect with that. And that's how this I will melt, this mean I will melt, and it will become this universal thing. And that's where the way, that is the means to become happy, and that's the means to become wise. That way, all other religions, and almost all theistic religions, what is the path for them. But for Buddha, it is like there is nothing like one I that we should discover, because this I is also like temporary. It is also ever changing. The thought of I comes now, and the very next moment when I am in deep meditation or when I am in deep sleep, that I will go away. That's why there is nothing like one permanent I. So you should understand even this I also as any other sensation or sound or any other physical object that comes and goes. So that is the approach of Buddha. That is what is the mindfulness or objective mindfulness approach, even towards this I. That's why the very question is wrong in the Buddhist perspective. That who am I is not the correct question. One should look for, one should ask oneself. That is not the correct question. Correct question is, what is this I, which appears sometimes, which disappears many other times. So many other times it will disappear. So in that way, even should have that objective approach to this I. Then you will completely annihilate the root of all the ignorance. Complete ignorance you can destroy, and thereby you can destroy the complete suffering. So please understand this basic difference between other theistic approaches and the Buddha's approach. Like, one should not stuck with this idea of who am I, because once you start searching in this manner, who am I, then you will end up in this kind of views. Like there is one universal I, you become one with the universal I, universal consciousness, universal love. And that leads to theistic ideas. There you can't completely annihilate or eradicate this suffering and ignorance and I. But once you start looking at this I as an objective thing, as an object, comes and goes like any other object, then you can completely annihilate, then completely experience the absolute liberation. So then you can completely eradicate ignorance and suffering. So that is one major difference between the Buddha's approach to understand ignorance and other theistic approach to understand ignorance. Ego or I-centered, say, ignorance is not the complete ignorance. I-ness and minus, you should understand again those things in an objective way. To try to understand this I-ness and minus in a subjective way, the small I should become one with one bigger I. Then you can't completely eradicate ignorance, then you can't completely eradicate suffering also. So please understand this major difference between this Buddhist approach to ignorance and suffering and the non-Buddhist approach to ignorance and suffering. Okay. Handling this I and I-ness and minus, handling this ego by understanding it correctly. It's not just becoming or say dissolving this small ego in the bigger ego. That is not the way to fix suffering and to fix ignorance. It is to understand, and through understanding, just annihilating and making it zero and becoming empty, becoming nothing. That is the Buddhist approach to handle this ego and handle this ignorance and handle the suffering. Now, in many of the discourses, Buddha highlights So even in this chanting also, I chanted Imina Punya Kammena Mame Bala Samagamo. With this punya of chanting this, with this punya of giving the discourse, of this punya of whatever meritorious things I am doing, let me be away from the fools, away from the foolish people. So that's what is my aspiration. That's what is your aspiration also, all the chanting. So that means association is very, very important. So if you are in the association of right people who are having right aspirations, right goals, right ways and means to achieve the right goals, and who are achieving the true happiness of equanimity, true happiness of stability, true happiness of nothingness. If you are in their association and the different ways and means that they are practicing, like morality, like generosity, like respecting the respectables, like practicing the right knowledge, right meditations, if you are in their association, then your ignorance will slowly it will dissolve. If you are in the wrong association, then definitely you are an ignorant person who is multiplying your ignorance. People who don't know the ways and means to annihilate their suffering, who are not aware of their final goal, the means to achieve that goal, the different ways and means to reduce their suffering. If they don't know, if they are in their association, then definitely you are aggravating your ignorance. That means right association is very, very important. Wrong association will multiply your ignorance. Right association will dissolve or reduce your ignorance. That is again one more point that Buddha highlights. Just like type, just like understanding ego, understanding I, instead of dissolving your ego in some supreme ego. The same way, the right association of the people who are having the right knowledge of this, say, ignorance and its opposite, wisdom, and the right knowledge about suffering and its opposite, happiness, their association, then understanding ignorance and coming out of it becomes easy. That's what is the point that Buddha is highlighting here. And next thing is understanding one's own ignorance is also a kind of wisdom. If you don't understand that you are ignorant, then you are definitely an absolute ignorant person. If you understand that there is an ignorance in me, then you are slowly coming out of it. You are half wise. That's what Buddha says. Accepting and understanding my limitations, my inabilities. That's what Buddha highlights in many discourses, in many verses. Don't be too proud of, don't be too rigid, or don't be too egoistic, even to understand and accept your ignorance. Then your ignorance will multiply. If you have some limitation, some weakness, should accept it, should understand it, and you should accept it. Then only you will get the alternative, the ways and means to come out of it. If you don't understand and accept it, if you still think that you are very smart, even though if you are ignorant, then there is no way for you to come out of it. Then absolutely you remain as an ignorant person. Say how much say immoral I am, how much stingy I am, how much say wrong practices, wrongdoings I am involved, how much hypocrite I am. If those things, if you don't understand, if you are doing a lot of evil things, but you are covering it, pretending as if you are a good person, or you are a wise person, or if you are like a holy person, that hypocrisy is the basic reason for multiplying your ignorance, multiplying your suffering, multiplying your say, demerits. In the sense, it is a truthfulness, it is honesty. That is, a dishonest person, a hypocrite person is definitely an ignorant person. Though he may be showing off that he is very good, very wise, he is holy, he is sacred, all his activities are very, very good. Though he is showing it off, and deep inside he is corrupt, He is corrupt to the core of his being. Such hypocrisy, such untruthfulness, such dishonesty that will multiply your ignorance, that will multiply your suffering. Such people will never, they can't come out of suffering and ignorance. Accepting, being truthful about your weaknesses, your limitations, your wrong means and wrong actions and wrong intents and wrong words. If those things, if you're covering it, if you're hiding it, then you end up in higher ignorance and higher suffering. All bodhisattvas' efforts, for that matter, all Buddhas, all good people for that matter, they try to remain honest and truthful and non-hypocrite about their weaknesses. Even the person with some smartness, some knowledge, he tries to remain honest and truthful. If you cover it, then you are multiplying your ignorance and it's multiplying your suffering. You may think it is smartness. That kind of smartness will not help you to achieve either freedom or wisdom or the happiness. You will fall into higher and higher degrees of ignorance and suffering. That is the key. That is the first engine kind of thing that will pull all other virtues. If you are truthful, so you will slowly come out of all the weaknesses, all the unwholesome things, all the parmis. Satcha parmi, the truthfulness parmi is the leader. That's what my teachers used to say when I was in Myanmar. Once you are truthful, once you are honest, automatically you can develop all other parmis or perfections. Like your metta, your loving kindness also will increase if you are truthful. If your shila, your truthfulness, your morality also will increase if you are truthful. Your generosity, your dana parmi also will increase if you are truthful. Your patience, your kanti parmi also will increase if you are truthful, if you are honest. That way, openness, frankness, truthfulness, honesty, that is the one that will actually make you to understand the things more and more clear. It will make you more and more confident, more and more wise, more and more clear, more and more confident. Then automatically all other virtues, all other parmis or punyas will follow you. Many people now, in the name of religion, in the name of spirituality, they are covering. That's why so many spiritual movements are a great failure. So many religions are a failure because of this hypocrisy, because of this covering inside something, expressing something else. So such people will corrupt themselves, corrupt the system, corrupt the entire organization, entire religion. If you want to promote your religion, the first and the best thing is to becoming truthful and honest. To get true happiness, if you want to come out of your ignorance, the best thing is to be truthful about your weaknesses, not to cover, not to hide, out of your eagerness to show off, out of your pride, out of your proudness, or out of your arrogance. If you are covering it, then you are multiplying your defilements, multiplying your weaknesses, multiplying your mental, unwholesome things or immoral things. So that is what is ignorance. So what I want to say is, ignorance is covering ignorance. If you cover your ignorance, then that is also a higher ignorance. So in that way, what I want you to tell you is like truthfulness, honesty, non-hypocrisy is a very, very powerful means to melt this ignorance, to come out of ignorance. Ignorance of what? Ignorance of not knowing what is true, what is untrue, what is good, what is not good, what is beneficial, what is not beneficial. What are right intentions, right efforts, right actions, right speech, what is not. All this discretion, and based on the discretion acting that is possible with frankness and openness, with truthfulness, with honesty. with non-hypocrisy. That is the point. Many spiritual movements, because of this hypocrisy only, they are becoming they are becoming like nisagya, not allowable. Many good people, many good spiritual people, they don't stay, they don't support such kind of hypocritic movements or organizations or sects or schools or groups, because in the company of such groups, of such people, of such say associations, then you are corrupting yourself, you are making yourself more foolish, more ignorant, and also you are making that entire system also more ignorant and more foolish, and you are bringing bad name and bringing say decline to that particular movement or particular say sect or group. That's the reason why say ignorance is multiplied by covering the ignorance. That's what I wanted to highlight. Okay, so now coming to the Abhidhamma aspects of this understanding this ignorance. So Buddha talks about there are two main reasons, there are two main mental factors which will create the different two kinds of consciousness, which are called unwholesome or the immoral consciousness. Buddha classifies different kinds of consciousness. So first one is the immoral consciousness. First group of consciousness is immoral consciousness. Because of such immoral consciousness, people will fall into very woeful states like animals, like hells, or very say painful say circumstances, painful life one will lead if you have more of this immoral consciousness in your mind. Such a person will lead very woeful, very painful life. So there are 12 kinds of such kind of immoral consciousness, and among these 12 kinds, two kinds of immoral consciousness. One is the doubt, the consciousness, your consciousness full of doubt about say the basic things about this law of action and reaction, cause and effect, good begets good, say the bad begets bad. If that kind of clarity if you don't have, and also in this ultimate goal of liberation, that is the goal of human life, and this Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, they represent that, and also the means to achieve it, these three things represent. Having that understanding, if you don't have faith in this Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, and not having faith in the past life, present life, and future life. The past life is responsible for my present life is responsible for my future life to a great extent. I accumulated karma in my past life that has pushed me to take this life, and whatever karma I don't accumulate here in this life, it will push me to take the better future life or the bad future life. If that kind of understanding if you don't have, if you have doubt in it, then also it is called doubt. It is called vichikicha. Vichikicha means there is no clarity. So that kind of clarity-less say mind or consciousness is ignorance. It is delusion or ignorance. In that way, so among these 12 immoral consciousness, so the consciousness with this doubt in this goal of life, in this means to achieve that goal of life, that is liberation. So these three things represent that Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, and law of action and reaction, the cause and effect. That kind of clarity if you don't have, so then that kind of chitta, that kind of consciousness is immoral consciousness with ignorance, with delusion, and such a mind will definitely accumulate more unwholesome. They will involve in more unwholesome things and actions. They multiply their ignorance and they remain in the woeful states only, like in the animal or in hells or in some miserable human states. They remain there only. So if you can come out of this doubt, then you are reducing your ignorance. You are reducing your moha, delusion, and ignorance. That is one kind of say akusala or immoral consciousness. Then the other kind of immoral consciousness we are talking about is uddacha. Uddacha means restlessness. Your mind is One is dullness, the other one is opposite, restlessness. Your mind is overpowered by a lot of thoughts. And because of that hyperactiveness of the mind, restlessness of the mind, again, you don't have some firm decision. You can't take firm decision and you can't plunge into action. It's because of your over smartness, the overthinking will come. And that is also ignorance. Over smartness, overthinking is also ignorance. And doubtful or dullness or not having clarity, and because of that, so much of laziness and dullness and no inaction, absolute inaction, absolute overaction in the mind, not in the physical things, because of overaction or overthinking in the mind, there is no actual physical action. That uddachada, the restlessness will make you simply hyperactive in the mind. Maybe physically also some unnecessary things will be keep going, not some proper, wise, skillful actions you can't do. So that kind of two extremes, the mind. Overthinking and dull thinking or lack of thinking. Both these things come under ignorance. So according to the Abhidhamma, is based on this consciousness. There are all kinds of unwholesome or immoral consciousness. The two kinds of immoral consciousness. One filled with this lack of energy, lack of clarity, that is dullness, that is doubt. And the other one is too much thinking, too much hyperactivity in the mind. And there also you can't take a proper decision. And these two states of mind, two consciousness, they are the ignorance-filled consciousness or the delusion-filled consciousness. And the remaining 10 immoral consciousness also, two are full of hate, full of hatred. Hatred is also rooted in ignorance. The core is actually ignorance. So based on ignorance only, you don't have understanding that ignorance, this hatred is not good, it will trouble me, it will trouble others, it is not suitable for getting a true decision, right decision. If because of the lack that knowledge, you are again and again you're expressing your hatred, your anger, your jealousy, your revenge. So even those things also are rooted in ignorance. And even the greed is also rooted in ignorance. There are 8 kinds of consciousness rooted in the greed. And again, the basis for greed is ignorance. In that way, all unwholesome things, all immoral things, they are rooted in ignorance only. Whether it is greed, whether it is hatred, whether it is delusion, indecisiveness, not taking the proper decision because of dullness, because of hyperactivity of the mind. These things also are rooted in ignorance. So in that way, ignorance is the biggest enemy. Because of this biggest enemy, also we have to face other enemies like greed, hatred, and delusion. That's what is the beautiful concept of this, say, immoral consciousness. All immoral consciousness are rooted in ignorance only. So if you cultivate more and more immoral consciousness based on this greed, rooted and delusion, then you will end up in more and more suffering. You will end up in more and more woeful states, woeful realms, woeful states of planes of existence, like animals, like very miserable human states. You remain there only. That's the basis again for this is the ignorance. In that way, Buddha defines ignorance, how it is, how ignorance is the cause of all other, say, the mental, negative or immoral factors of the mind, like greed, hatred, and delusion. In that way, Buddha says, avidya pachaya sankara. Avidya means the ignorance is the cause of sankara. Sankara means all these things, your greed, your hatred, your delusion, your so many other negative factors in the mind, like your shamelessness, moral shamelessness, moral fearlessness, hypocrisy, pride, wrong view. All these things, they are again rooted in the ignorance only. That's what Buddha says. There are 40 mental factors, not the consciousness. Consciousness are full, immoral consciousness are full. But because of the coming together of different immoral factors, the immoral consciousness arises in the mind. Just like there are different building material. Say for this building is made up of bricks and the hollow blocks and the cement. There is another building there which is made up of the glass and some bricks and some hollow blocks. Some other building is made up of wood and some bricks and some cement also. That way there are different kinds of buildings. There are different kinds of building material also. So buildings are nothing but your consciousness. Building materials are nothing but your uh, your chetasikas, mental factors. So different mental factors, they come together and they build different kinds of consciousness. So different mental factors like these greed, hatred, and delusion, they come together and they build different kinds of immoral consciousness. So these different mental building blocks, these mental factors, Buddha talks about 14 of them. So among all these 14, like your moha, delusion, ahirika, shamelessness, anattapa, moral fearlessness, uddacha, restlessness, your greed, lobha, your wrong view, your mana, your pride, your ego, your pride, your hatred, your issa, your jealousy, macharya, your possessiveness, vichikicha, your doubt, tina, midda. Tina means like dullness, physical dullness and mental dullness. That is tina and midda. So lazy, so boring, so lazy. There is no movement in your body and in your mind also, in your decisions also. In that way, Buddha enlists some 14 mental factors. By coming together, these mental factors, they create different kinds of consciousness. Like the building blocks, like they're if they come together, then they will make the buildings. The same way, these different mental building blocks, they come together and they build different buildings. They are called the consciousness. So there are 14 of them. 14 of these building blocks. They create different kinds of bad minds. So these 14, all the 14 of them, they are rooted actually. Their basis, their root is again ignorance. All these 14 that I have listed now. Your delusion, your shamelessness, your moral shamelessness, moral fearlessness, your say jealousy, your possessiveness, your stinginess, your hatred, your laziness, your dullness, your doubt. All these things are rooted in ignorance only. So if you are becoming more and more aware, more and more say critical in knowing what is right, what is wrong, then all these negative mental factors, they start becoming weaker and weaker. In that way, Buddha analyzes how this ignorance is the basis for all our other mental negativities. And all these mental negativities, mental negative factors, again, they make the consciousness, again, they make the minds. And these minds, they make the bodies. And these bodies, they make the senses. And then from the senses, you start taking the impulses and you start experiencing the sensations, the physical feelings. Then you start developing attachment or detachment. And that's because of that pranaha, your craving. You take birth, and once you take birth, then you go through, say, a lot of oppression, because to take care of this body and mind, you have to do a lot of things. You become the slave of this body and mind. And during that process, you grow, you become bored, you end up in a lot of diseases also. And again, you die, and again, you take rebirth. So this process keeps on going, and the root is ignorance only. Ignorance is a root for all your mental factors, mental concomitants, they say, mental negative factors, or even for the mind itself, ignorance. For the arising of the very mind, ignorance is the cause. And once the mind arises, body also arises. Once the body and mind arises, then you fall into the trap of this oppression, trap of this old age, trap of this disease, death, again rebirth. All this cycle, it keeps going. The root is ignorance only. So to fix it, to fix this ignorance, as I was telling you, one should understand the Four Noble Truths and the law of cause and effect, and you should see the I, this ego. Ego, you should not take it in a subjective way. to take it in an objective way, should see the ego as an ego like any other object, not like a part of one super ego or one, say one ultimate ego or one God. That way, you should not look into it. So in that way, if you start understanding ego, start understanding the mind, start understanding the different mental factors that will create the negative mind, the different negative minds, like the greedy mind, like the hateful mind, or the deluded mind, then you start applying this wisdom of Four Noble Truths, wisdom of cause and effect, and also apply this mindfulness, meditativeness, start applying the different techniques that you are learning in your different levels of meditation regarding this awareness component, regarding this feeling component, regarding this confidence component, regarding this clarity, the right understanding component of the mind, and slowly you will be melting the ignorance, and you will come out of all the ignorance, and you can derive the true happiness, true peace of mind, true enlightenment, true liberation. So that is what is the importance of understanding ignorance and the right knowledge. So again, the different tips given by Buddha, not being hypocrite, be in the right association with the wise people and the people who are working on ignorance and melting it or dissolving it, being truthful of one's own inabilities, one's own weaknesses, accepting it and trying to rectify it, not being egoist, not trying to cover it. So in that way, understanding the loopholes, understanding the inabilities and weaknesses, and being frank about it, being open about it, being truthful about it. These are two very powerful tools to fix the ignorance. So, and of course, all other practices, the punya kriyas and parmis, generosity and morality and meditativeness, respecting the respectables, and service, like promoting these things, promoting these courses and all. And from next month, we are making it very say authoritative way of promoting these different mind purification, say meditation levels, meditation programs, different levels. So promoting these things, that is also one superior service. And then listening this right knowledge, being in the company of right knowledge. So in that way, if you dedicate your life for the cause of understanding ignorance, understanding wisdom, and based on this friends and enemies which are already there in your mind. So fixing your enemies with the help of your friends. That means fixing your ignorance with the help of your wisdom in these different ways and means. These things will constitute, these things will make you a more, say, authoritative person, strong person to who can be able to come out of this ignorance. Okay. So first of all, give priority to this mind development, priority to understand ignorance and wisdom and working on it as much as possible. So then, understanding ignorance, understanding, say, wisdom or knowledge authoritatively, and then coming out of it, both experientially and also intellectually. With experiential wisdom also, you should come out of ignorance, and with intellectuality, with analytical mind, with faithful mind, properly having that intuitive mind. Many people, though they may not say analyze the things very efficiently, but there is something called intuition. With if they are some good heart, intuitively they can feel, oh, this is wisdom, this is good, this is bad, this is wisdom, this is ignorance. That way, intuitively also they can feel. So with that intuitive wisdom, with the analytical wisdom, with the right association, with openness, frankness, you can fix your ignorance. Of course, as I was telling you, there are so many ways and means to understand ignorance and ways to fix it. Of course, in each and every discourse, each and every Dhamma talk, you can understand the different say aspects of ignorance. You can understand in a different way. And today, of course, I'll try to bring it in a nutshell, in a comprehensive way about the ignorance. So some other time we'll again focus on this ignorance, and we can discuss, because there's a lot of stuff to discuss about this ignorance. I think today this much is enough. Now, if you have some questions, you can ask. Yeah, there is a question here. Vandami Banteji, what is the difference between ignorance and delusion? How will delusion work on mind? Thank you. Yeah, this is one, say, one critical question which requires a little deeper understanding. Ignorance, avidya, means not knowing. Delusion means knowing wrongly. Deluded mind means like distorted understanding. Ignorance means not having understanding. Delusion means like distorted understanding, knowing the right as wrong, wrong as the right. In that way also one can understand delusion. There's something called, it's called vipallasa, not knowing the things as they are. It is in a distorted way. You have grasped it, you have observed it, you have perceived it, then it is delusion. In Abhidhamma, so delusion is one of the say immoral mental factor, immoral chetasika, immoral mental factor. There are 13 more immoral mental factors, as just now I told you. The first one is delusion. There are remaining 13, like your ahirika, anattappa, like means your anger, your hatred, your jealousy, your shamelessness, your doubt. All these things, they come under the immoral mental factors. Delusion is also one of them. So with some say corrupted way or in a distorted way, you're understanding something. That is delusion. In addition to that, your doubt, your jealousy, your restlessness, all these things also, they are immoral. So behind this, at the core of this, all these 14, ignorance is only there. You have not understood about these 14 things correctly. That's why these 14 things have arisen in your mind. So ignorance is the basis of all these 14 things, including delusion. But delusion is one among these 14. So that is the difference between ignorance and delusion. Ignorance is universal with regard to all kinds of immoral things, unwholesome things, whereas delusion is one among the 14 universal mental factors, or all pervading unwholesome, immoral mental factors, which you can see in all the unwholesome consciousness. So that is the difference between delusion and ignorance. In brief, what I can say, delusion is one of the 14 ignorant, unwholesome, immoral mental factors, whereas ignorance is pervaded in all the 14 unwholesome, immoral mental factors, but delusion is one among these 14 unwholesome mental factors. So that is the difference between delusion and ignorance. Okay. How will delusion work on the mind? So delusion work on the mind mainly because of the wrong association. Because the people who have, again, with a distorted mind, if they perceive the realities, like as I was telling you, the theistic ideas, they have the distorted or the partial truths. They have seen the imperfect truths, and they conclude it as something like it is the creator God or something like that. They have concluded. So in the company of those things, in the company of their words, again and again repeatedly to hear to them, so you also have the deluded idea about what is truth, what is untruth. That is what is delusion. Delusion means like distorted or imperfectly you see something and you conclude it as that is the ultimate reality. That is what is delusion. So because of that deluded say influence, you will also become deluded. You won't see the depth of that reality. You won't see that reality as it is because of some hearsay heard from somebody, or because of wrong conclusions. You consider something as real, though it is not real. So such kind of conclusions, definitely it will push you to take wrong decisions, and then you end up in more and more suffering. So in that way, delusion has an impact on your decision making, on your life. Of course, I can explain these things about this delusion and ignorance, maybe for hours and hours, but I think this much is enough at this juncture. So a deluded mind is the one which has not seen the reality as it is. It has not the reality to its perfection, to its ultimate. It has taken the conclusion. It has made the conclusion with the imperfect observation. Such a kind of reality is not the ultimate reality. Such a kind of conclusion will definitely hamper in your day-to-day decisions, like that you might have seen. So this radicalization also comes from delusion. People with deluded ideas, they try to impose their ideas with a lot of force. That is what is called radicalization. All extremity comes from delusion only. Then you don't mind, say even to kill others because of thinking that it's a deluded idea. In that way, it will have an impact in your life, not only in this the religious in the religious life, even in day-to-day decisions also. If you have very strong deluded say idea about something, then you don't try to see the things as it is. Then you become more aggressive in all your say levels, all your different phases of life, all the different dimensions of life, in your social life, in the personal life, in the family life. Everywhere you try to impose, try to force because of delusion, because you have some distorted opinion that you want to impose on others. You are not looking at the situation. You are not gauging. Your mindfulness, your awareness will be overpowered by your deluded idea. That is the power of delusion. In that way, one should be careful about this working of delusion on your mind, and thereby it works on your decisions also. It influences your decisions also, your life also. Banteji, what are some common ignorant practices we do thinking they are right practices, which will harm us in the long run? Very many things, so many things we think the wrong things are the right things. It varies from situation to situation, person to person. Silabhata Paramasada is one thing. So blindly following some rites and rituals, though you are not deriving anything from it, or at least some peace of mind if you are deriving, it's okay. But even peace of mind also, if you are not deriving, simply doing the things very blindly, very superficially, forcefully, any ritual or any ceremony or any rites and rituals, all those things, they are nothing but the ignorant things. If you are deriving something, if you are emulating the quality of some deity that you are worshipping, and it's giving you some happiness, or that very chanting or very say process, if it gives you some happiness, some hygiene, some kind of peace, some kind of harmony among family members, it's okay. But it is giving nothing but simply forcefully with some tension. If you are practicing any rites or rituals or any practices, then they're absolutely ignorant practices. Sir, when you say these important things, I feel I can apply it, but when I go to apply it, it always fails. Why? That's because of your say lack of strength, that lack of conviction, lack of say energy in your conviction. It's again, of course, dullness. It's again because of maybe old age. So then that energy levels will not be there, and again the body may not support. Though in the mind you are aware that this is right, this is perfect, but the body may not support because Body has its own limitations. Body also should have a lot of energy. That's why I always encourage people to learn these things at the very young age itself. Then the body and the mind, if they go together in practicing these things, in putting forth these ideas into practice, then you will derive the benefits here and now, in this life also, in this life itself. Now also it's okay. In the old age also, if you learn, though the body may not support, though you can't practice, you can't put these things into practice. But if it's very much firmly, say, absorbed in the mind, then if not in this life, because if you are not putting forth these things in the life, it will definitely help in the subsequent lives. In that way, one need not be upset, one need not feel bad that I can't put forth these things into practice. There may be so many factors, maybe the family, maybe the association, maybe the age, old age, maybe the physical weakness, all these factors may be there, but one need not be disappointed or discouraged. One should firmly develop these convictions, this understanding in the mind. Then sooner or later, even the body also may listen to this firm conviction of the mind. It's possible, even in this very life. Or if not, then definitely it will be carried to the next life with a new body, with a very supporting body, very energetic body. Then applying these things will become very easy. That way, when they are learning Dhamma, when they are learning these things, there is no need to be upset for any reason. Even though if you are not applying even one aspect of this, exactly if you are not applying this correctly, if you are not applying, but still, if it is penetrating, going deeper and deeper in the mind, you should feel happy, you should rejoice. Yes, I'm learning, I'm going deep and deep in the mind. So you should rejoice that very firm, learning, very firm understanding of these things. Sooner or later, it will help you in your actions also. Okay. Okay, so we conclude with one small chant. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa bhavatu sabba mangalam rakkantu sabba devata sabba buddhanubhavena sabba dhammanubhavena sabba sanghanubhavena sada swati bhavantu te sukhi bhaveyang nidduko aham nicca aham viya idacha me sukhi hontu majjata chatavedino imam hi gammante dhamme satta hontu sukhi sada tato parancarajjesu chakkavale sujantano. Sadhu, 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 sukhi hontu mangalko. May all of you understand this, your own ignorance, accept this, and work on this, fix this, and may all of you be happy, healthy, and peaceful. May all beings also be happy, healthy, and peaceful. Sukhi rahe.